Orkney in Scotland has some of the oldest and largest megalithic complexes in the British Isles, as well as some fascinating Neolithic settlements. Aside from the more famous monuments such as Skara Brae and the Ring of Brodgar, there are actually many other extraordinary sites and seemingly random menhirs. The ancients were prolific builders on that windswept and scenic archipelago. If we want to solve the mysteries of the ancient past, then Neolithic Orkney is an important part of the puzzle. Orkney is made up of 70 islands, 20 of which are inhabited, and is around 16 kilometres off the northeast coast of mainland Scotland. Inhabited since the Mesolithic, Orkney has a rich history, and just like the rest of Scotland, Ireland, Wales and England, experienced a surge of megalith building activity during the Neolithic, which was supported by a population living in extensive domestic villages. The communities who inhabited Neolithic Orkney are referred to by archaeologists as the grooved ware people because of the pottery they produced. It seems their culture developed indigenously in Orkney, with their grooved pottery style then spreading to Britain and Ireland later on. There's also the intriguing possibility that the construction of Stonehenge and Avebury in southern England was inspired by Orkney's megalith builders. Much of the grooved ware pottery has been found at henge sites such as the Durrington Walls, Marden Henge, Fixbury Ring and Stonehenge, so archaeologists think it was used for both practical and ritual purposes. I've plotted many of the Neolithic sites on Google Earth just so you can get an idea of the intensity of activity on the archipelago at that time. This is by no means an exhaustive list though. Those locations marked in yellow are settlements, those in red are megalithic sites, and those in blue are funerary monuments. In this video, I'm discussing the Neolithic settlements of Orkney, which is where everyday life, farming, and a little bit of ritual activity appears to have taken place. In my next episode, I'll look into the megalithic monuments, including stone circles, henges, and menhirs that form the sacred landscape of the islands. The Knap of Howar is a Neolithic farmstead on Papua Westray that dates back to 3700 BCE. Built on an earlier midden, a rubbish tip basically, the farmstead is made up of two windowless stone buildings connected by a passageway with doors which face the shore. A hearth, a cupboard and sections of partitions still remain, as does much of the walls. However, the roof, which was probably made of turf, has long since perished. It's thought to be the oldest preserved stone house in northern Europe. Probably the most famous Neolithic settlement on Orkney is Skara Brae, which is located on the island called Mainland. Skara Brae is part of the UNESCO World Heritage Site, the heart of Neolithic Orkney, which also includes the Ring of Brodgar, Mace Howe Chambered Cairn, and the Stones of Ness. Skara Brae dates back to 3180 BCE and is amazingly well preserved. Just as with the Knap of Howar, the houses of Skara Brae were built into a pre-existing midden and connected by covered passageways. Some of the houses contained fitted stone furniture which is still intact and is laid out similarly in each one. This furniture includes what's referred to as a dresser and beds. The houses also have a central hearth. It's thought that small antechambers leading from the houses with stone drains were indoor toilets. The inhabitants of Skara Brae were pastoralists who also grew some crops and ate seafood. Both the Knap of Howar and Skara Brae would have been closer to the shoreline during the Neolithic. Coastal erosion has led to their current seaside locations, and in the case of Skara Brae, it's thought quite a bit of the original settlement has been lost. As I mentioned in my video, amazing research now out on Scotland's carved stone balls. Hundreds of small carved stone balls decorated with protruding knobs and geometric or spiral motifs have been found throughout Scotland. In fact, they are unique to that region, date back to the Neolithic, and their function is unknown. Some of these were excavated from Skara Brae, along with gaming dice, tools, pottery, and jewellery. Motifs were also found engraved in various furniture within the houses, such as on bedposts. No weapons were found, which has led archaeologists to think life on Neolithic Orkney was pretty peaceful. The village was abandoned in 2500 BCE, and archaeologists have argued as to whether this happened abruptly or slowly over a long period of time. Interestingly, this is around the same time that Malta's Temple people abandoned the islands as well, before new Bronze Age settlers moved in. The Ness of Brodgar is another extensive Neolithic settlement which has been undergoing excavation since 2003. A very informative website gives updates during the dig seasons. I've put a link to it below. The Ness of Brodgar is 9 kilometres to the southeast of Skara Brae and sits on an isthmus between the lochs of Howar and Stennes, rather than on the coast. It is close to the huge megalithic complexes of the Ring of Brodgar and the Stones of Stennes, as well as various other menhirs and earthworks and the Barnhouse Settlement. The village is made up of various flagstone structures, with building work having begun around 3000 BCE, although it's thought these replaced earlier houses. Interestingly, archaeologists have uncovered evidence for paintwork on the walls. 2 large sections of wall were identified to the northwest and southeast of the Ness of Brodgar. These have been labelled as the greater and lesser walls and are thought to have demarcated the settlement. They may have formed part of a surrounding wall, meaning the whole village was enclosed, but evidence for this is lacking. Just as at Skara Brae, hearths were found in the buildings, as well as one of the carved balls and an engraved stone. One of the buildings, known as Structure 10, stands out compared to the others and is often referred to as a temple. Roughly square-shaped, the structure has 4-metre thick walls with a standing stone containing a hole built into one of them. The Ness of Brodgar was abandoned sometime between 2400 and 2200 BCE, and this coincided with a ritual feast at Structure 10 involving the sacrifice of hundreds of cattle and some red deer, as well as the placing of an upturned cow skull inside it. Around half a kilometre to the southeast of the Ness of Brodgar lies the remains of another Neolithic village now referred to as the Barnhouse Settlement. Dating back to 3000 BCE, it comprised around 15 houses. Just as at Skara Brae, the houses have hearths and stone furniture still remaining, but rather than being sunk into a midden, they were built as freestanding structures. A central courtyard between all the houses was used for practical activities such as making pottery and knapping flint. The Barnhouse Settlement was abandoned in 2600 BCE. However, a new ceremonial structure was added later, which aligned with sunset on the summer solstice. Another Neolithic village was found on the island of Westrae, which is now called the Links of Noltland. This archaeological site also contains the remains of a later Bronze Age settlement. As well as a house, a larger structure thought to have been a meeting place was excavated there. Some of the most interesting finds at Links of Noltland are 3 figurines, one of which is thought to be the earliest representation of a human face found in Scotland. Called the Westrae wife or Orkney Venus, the sandstone figurine is just 4 centimetres in height, and it's debated as to whether it depicts a man or a woman. Neolithic villages are often built of timber, so very little tends to remain apart from post holes and pottery. With ceremonial features such as stone circles, archaeologists have more luck since they tend to be well preserved, although that doesn't necessarily help anyone to understand what their true function was in any case. The way the Neolithic settlements were built on Orkney means they remained for thousands of years after abandonment as protected time capsules into another world. These Neolithic villages built practical and functional houses, but at the same time elaborate ritual centres. It's strange how all the settlements were abandoned at roughly the same time. As waterside villages, perhaps erosion and floods were becoming commonplace, prompting a move, or maybe as the Bronze Age dawned across Europe and new migrations took place, the threat of outsiders was becoming too great in low-lying settlements. However, while the area was an active Neolithic centre, it seems clear to me that the villages, megaliths and tombs on Orkney were all part of an interconnected landscape. The ancestors were resourceful and they were busy. They clearly had a plan. But what was it? In my next video, in the next couple of days, I'll discuss the megalithic structures and their alignments. If you enjoyed this, please hit the like button, subscribe if you don't already, and take a look at the other uploads on my channel. Thank you to my patrons. If anyone else wants to join my Patreon community, the link is in the description below. Come and find me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, where I post megaliths regularly. I've also got a website with some further information on the sites I visit, megalithhunter.com.